Okay, so to wrap up, this will be the last video for the day, I think. I should probably do one more, but I don't know. Okay, so the kind of the other thing I want to show you today, real quick, is just to go through. So I was mentioning in the last video that life seems, when we think about time, it somehow is both fast and slow. It's very fast in that I can't believe that like in my 20s were 20 years ago. That seems crazy. I can't believe it went that quick. Um, and also it goes really slow. Like I feel like I look the same as I look yesterday. And yesterday I looked the same as the day before that, but somehow I got to be a 40-year-old. Even though I feel like life in quarantine is very slow. But your life also goes very fast. It's a paradox. It's opposite things combined. It's a fancy form of irony. So what Romeo is describing love in those same terms. And so what he does is he lists off the paradoxes. And so he says, oh me, what fray was here? Yet tell me not, for I have heard it all, right? He says, well, would you get in a fight? He says, you know what, I don't want to hear about your stupid fight. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. These opposites are combined. You guys we live in a world that involves opposites, hate and love. And then he gets on a whole thing where he talks about, he combines them in his mind. Oh, brawling love, that's fighting love. Oh, loving hate. Oh, anything of nothing first create. Oh, heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep that is not what it is. Do you see that it's a list of opposites, right? So his point is that we live in a world, he says, where there's so much hate and also so much love. And then he begins to say, how come it is that, like, when you're in love with somebody, if they don't love you back, then you have the feelings of heaviness and lightness at the same time, because you're happy because you're in love, but you're sad because you don't have the person that you actually want. And he lists off all of these kinds of other, he lists off all of these other paradoxes. So, and they're pretty simple. Brawling love, right? So, yeah, I'm sure you guys have had this experience where you're in love with someone, but you're also fighting with them at the same time. Oh, loving hate, where you end up hating somebody that you love, somehow paradoxically at the same time. Many of you will have this experience with parents and children. Many of you guys will be able to say that you both love and hate your parents. You both love and hate your children. A lot of my friends now are stuck at home with their kids, and they love their kids, but they also hate their kids. It's a paradox. Oh, big fucking helicopter. Oh, the helicopter. Ah! That's exciting. Okay, see, that's something we don't get in our classroom is helicopters that we can see out the window. It's kind of cool. So all Romeo is doing here is he's listing off these paradoxes. A brawling love, a loving hate, oh, anything of nothing first create. Now he gets big right there. Oh, anything of nothing first create. He's thinking about God creating the universe out of nothing. First there was nothing, and then in the Bible, first there was nothing, and then God said, let there be light, there was light. So first there was nothing, and then God created the universe. A lot of people, religious people too, found that impossible. The idea that something could be created out of nothing? That's crazy. So Romeo but it's one of those opposites, something and nothing, loving, hate, brawling, love. And so his mind, when he's thinking about, boy, we live in a world with love and hate because I'm in love and you guys are fighting. And then he says, but how come being in love is also like fighting? And then he says, while we're on the subject of opposites, how is it that anything is created out of nothing? He gets on a bigger philosophical track about this. And then he starts listing off things that are opposites. Oh, heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health. It's just a list of things that are opposites. Still waking sleep that is not what it is. Like waking sleep. Like he feels like he's awake and asleep at the same time because he spends all his time thinking about love, so he's in a kind of dream world. So it's a waking sleep, which is a paradox because wake and sleep are supposed to be opposites. But he's somehow sort of asleep while he's awake because he's dreaming about the woman he loves with while he's awake. He's daydreaming is what we say. But it's like sleep, but he's awake, but it's not sleep. So he just lists off all of these paradoxes. But it's worth pointing out, just for the first thing I want to keep an eye on, is that these kinds of paradox, it's called oxymoron, is when you have two opposites like this combined. It's very famous in a certain kind of poetry that's very popular in Shakespeare's day. And Shakespeare was very good at this kind of poetry. Phoenix and the Turtle is one of the best poems I've ever read. Very little read poem, but it's by Shakespeare. It's fucking great. Very fucking difficult. I can help you with it if you're interested. But the reason I tell you about this is because I'm continuing the pattern that I started. The opening words of the play are a sonnet. It is a poem. And Romeo's opening words are not a poem, but he's doing the stuff that is traditionally done in poetry, a certain kind of poetry that Shakespeare was good at and that a lot of people in Shakespeare's day did, which was a poetry where you combine opposites, where you talk. There's several words for this. It's irony, metaphysical poetry, oxymoron, paradox. These are all types of irony. But what's interesting is just that I guess Shakespeare is involved in the way Romeo talks. He's clearly thinking in terms of poetry. And the prologue to the play is a sonnet. It's a poem that has a set number of lines, syllables per line, and it rhymes. And this play is interested in thinking about poetry. And so I just wanted to point out that those two first moments are very much about the value of poems and poetry. All right, looking good. A couple more minutes. Let's do some more stuff. I'm having fun. Where am I going next? Okay. Oh boy. Okay, well that's too much to do today. I can't do that. Yeah, maybe I'll start it a little bit and kind of just do a little preview. Let's see how we're doing here. Mercutio. In the Mercutio is one of Romeo's crazy friend. He's a little nuts. In the movie by Leonardo DiCaprio, he dresses up like a woman for a party and does a crazy drag dance routine, and he does drugs, and he gives this crazy speech when he's on drugs. The prologue to that speech, it's really, I think it's got to be the biggest speech in the play. But you can see it right here. I'm on page 6. This is before they go to the party, where Romeo's going to the party because Rosalind is going to be there, who he loves. But when he gets to the party, he'll see Juliet for the first time and fall in love with her. So there's a little opening here, and then Mercutio goes on this massive fucking speech. It's huge. You can see how big it is just by looking at the piece of paper like that. But before the speech gets started, is one of my very favorite lines in all of Shakespeare. Is Romeo says, "I dreamt a dream tonight." "And so did I." "Well, what was yours?" "The dreamers often lie in bed asleep while they do dream things true." "Oh, well then I see Queen Mab hath been with you. She is the fairies' midwife." Blah, 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 blah. But this opening line is just so wonderful. I think about it all the time. Romeo says, "I dreamt a dream tonight." And Mercutio, instead of asking him about the dream, very rudely says, "And so did I." And Romeo asks him about it because I dreamt it. Like if somebody says, "Oh, I had a dream last night," you go, "Oh, me too." Like you see how you're making it all about you. Like you shouldn't. When someone says, "I dreamt a dream," don't say, "Me too." You should say, "Well, what was yours?" Romeo very politely asks Mercutio about his dream. "I dreamt a dream tonight." "Well, so did I." "Okay, well, what was yours?" "The dreamers often lie." And then Romeo says, "In bed asleep while they do dream things true." There's a pun. There's a joke here. The word lie has two meanings. We already went over this with Macbeth. Shakespeare does the same joke on the same words, which is lie means to say something that's not true, and it also means to lie down. What Mercutio is doing here is he's making fun of Romeo, because Romeo is a dreamer. Romeo is in love. Romeo thinks about dreams and love all the time, and Mercutio does not care about that. And so when Romeo says, "I dreamt a dream last night," Mercutio doesn't really want to hear it. So he cuts him off and says, "Well, so did I." And Romeo says, "Well, what was yours?" And he says, "Dreamers often lie," meaning all those fancy dreams you're having are bullshit. And Romeo protests. He says, "No, no, no, no." And he plays a game because he says dreamers often lie, meaning dreamers don't tell the truth. Your dreams aren't true. You're lying to me if you even say you had a dream. You're just trying to say something fancy and poetic about love. And Romeo says they do lie. He agrees they lie, but he doesn't mean. Mercutio says dreamers often lie, meaning they tell false things. But Romeo says, yes, they do lie in bed asleep, right? So dreamers lie down when they're sleeping, and while they're sleeping, they dream things true. This sets up one of the major conflicts in the play. And I'm just going to sort of sketch it out, and then we'll end this series of videos, I think, for the day. Romeo believes in love. The play opens up with a poem. Romeo has a poetic soul where he thinks about love in terms of paradoxes, oxymorons, irony, metaphysical poetry. Mercutio doesn't give a shit about any of that. For Mercutio, Romeo wants to talk about love. Mercutio wants to talk about fucking. This sets up one of the main distinctions. He thinks all this dreamy love stuff is bullshit. He thinks it's just horny teenagers, whereas Romeo believes his love is mystical and important. And this sets up one of the major conflicts in the play. Romeo and Juliet represent a pure love, and Mercutio represents people who think love is nonsense. It's just horny teenagers that want to fuck. No, I'll see you next time.